Good morning, everybody. My name is Joshua Hansen. I am the Chief Executive Officer of this Fall 2018 Business Conference. What we have in store for you today is a presentation by Pat Settle on railroad logistics. I am pleased to introduce Mr. Pat Settle. Most of you know him as Engineer Pat around school. In his free time, he likes to chill with his family and do a lot of photography on railroads and trains within the Hampton Roads area. And without further ado, welcome, Mr. Pat Settle.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for coming today. My name is Pat Settle, and I'm a senior here at Virginia Wesleyan. And today I'm going to present to you my presentation on how railroads impact logistics, both domestically and globally. But before I get started, I'd like to thank my guests for coming today. I want to thank my father for coming out and supporting me today, Coach Northern, Phil, Professor Nafar, Dr. Yule, and many others. I greatly appreciate your support today. How often do we rely on our railroads? We rely on our railroads heavily in our economies because our railroads can move large amounts of bulk materials from point A to point B very efficiently. But what was the railroad that really started this long distance travel? The Transcontinental Railroad was the spark. That was completed on May 10, 1869 in Promontory, Utah, where the Union Pacific and Central Pacific met. And this photo here below is the most iconic historical photo. What's carried by train? Think about it for a second. A lot of our everyday items, including some in this room, are transported by train, including the cars we drive, the steel that's used to manufacture them, fossil fuels used to fuel our cars in our industrial plants, clothes we wear, and the food we eat. What pulls the trains we see? We see big diesel engines. I have two examples here. The first one is a General Electric locomotive that has actually been rebuilt by GE for Norfolk Southern. It is classified as an AC-44C6M locomotive that was originally built in February of 1996. This unit was rebuilt at GE's state-of-the-art Fort Worth plant this past March when it got a brand new wide cab and upgraded electrical system and efficiency. And that is shown to the left. The second one that's off to the right is GP38-2 number 5290, known as the Engineer Pat engine. That engine was built in February of 1973 for the Penn Central Railroad that I talked about last time. It served under Conrail and now serving under Norfolk Southern. Has 2,000 horsepower and produced by Electromotive Division. Types of freight cars we see. When we see trains, we see lots of different types of cars. Why do we see different types of cars? It's because that each car carries a specific commodity or a specific cargo. And here is a small list that we'll be going over today. Boxcars and refrigerator cars. We see a lot of these. Boxcars up on the top carry general merchandise that need to be kept dry, including paper that we use to type our documents, televisions to watch trains, and computers that we use every day.
Televisions to watch trains.
Absolutely. The next car I have below is a refrigerator car. It is a boxcar with a refrigeration unit installed. This is used to carry perishable items, including juice. We have meat and potatoes. And a prime example is Tropicana. CSX has a big contract with Tropicana to move juice to and from Jacksonville to New Jersey. It's a really big business for CSX. Coal hoppers. We see a lot of these here because of Pier 6, which is about 15 minutes from this campus. They're used to mostly carry coal, sand, and gravel. And here I see a nice long string of hoppers going through Petersburg this past summer. Covered hoppers. Like an open-top hopper, the covered hopper is used to keep grains dry from the elements. It's mostly used to transport grain and fertilizer. And we see some of it here around this time of the year. And I catch an NS covered hopper with the brand new logo on the side in Salisbury, North Carolina when I did my internship over the summer. Gondolas. There are two different types. We have the traditional gondola in the top photo. That is used to carry exposed loads, including steel coils, some scrap metal, and long pieces of pipe. They have removable sides for loading and unloading at industrial plants, and some of them actually dump on either side, like this ballast gondola that you see below. This gondola is mainly used for maintenance of way projects or track projects. For example, this gondola below was loaded with ballast. It receives power from the locomotive, and it will dump to one side of the track, and then they'll take the track equipment and smooth out the gravel. It's a really neat progress that they do on the railroad. Tank cars. We are seeing more and more of these cars now because this has become a very big business for the railroad, transporting flammable liquids from one place to another. They carry flammable liquids including gasoline, propane, crude oil, even dish soap that we use in our homes, corn syrup, wax to manufacture crayons, and petroleum gas. And right at the bottom, you will see where a little placard, where it will be right here in this corner, that will tell you what is in that tanker. And I have a couple of examples. 1987 is regular gasoline we fuel our cars with. 1993 is diesel to fuel the big trucks. And 1093 is liquid propane. Flat cars. There are three different types of flat cars that are used. The first we see is the traditional flat car. They are used to transport wide and oversized loads from place to place. I have two examples. They've carried trash dumpsters and carried new sections of track. The new sections of track I saw on a manifest that was going up to New York for a track project. And the trash dumpsters, this has a unique story. What I have read recently that the landfills up north are so full they cannot hold all the trash. CSX and US management have a contract, and CSX will bring the load south to Petersburg. They'll interchange with Norfolk Southern, where they will take them, get the trash emptied, then they will bring it back to CSX, where they'll take it back up north and get loaded again. It's become a pretty good business for CSX. The other two flat cars we have are a bulkhead flat car in the top photo, and the super flat car or lowboy in the bottom photo. The bulkhead flat car is basically a traditional flat car, but with the exception of two raised sides to keep the load from shifting forward and backward. That is rebar that's getting ready to be used on a concrete project, and that was going north. And the lowboy, which was brand new right off the assembly line, was going south on a CSX manifest. Coil cars. Coil cars are starting to come back on the rails because the steel industry right now is booming. We're going to be seeing a lot of these cars that actually transport the steel coils to our manufacturing plants. A few examples are General Motors to manufacture cars, Ford and Caterpillar that manufactures equipment, and General Electric to manufacture locomotives. Here I catch an old Conrail coil shield car that was on a manifest train in Landis, North Carolina over the summer. And this, in fact, was on one of my friend's trains in Carolina. Container cars. We see a monster load of these because of our major ports, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Container cars are used to transport containers from point A to point B. The containers that you see here, this is called a double stack. It has two containers stacked on top of each other. They're held together by all four corners with a pin to keep the loads from shifting. There are three different types of containers. You have 20-foot, 40-foot, and 45-foot containers that we see here. And we see truck trailers that are 53 feet in length. Here I catch a nice length of containers going through Horseshoe Curve in Altoona, going to the nearest terminal. Spine cars. I just mentioned truck trailers a second ago. The spine car actually transports the truck trailers because it's called spine car because it has a steel beam across the center. And it has a peg where it will hold the trailer in place. Here I catch one of the hottest trains on CSX, QO31, which has the hotshot UPS run from New Jersey down to Jacksonville. One of my favorite trains. Auto racks. I mentioned a minute ago that cars are transported by train. They're transported in one of these cars. It's called an auto rack. And these are enclosed, as the picture describes, to keep the cars dry from the elements. And these are transported from all of our distribution places. So when they leave the manufacturing place, they come to one of these places. We have an example here. This is the NS Automotive Distribution Point. In the NS book, it's called the Poe Auto Ramp. This is where all the inbound auto racks come in. They come in by train, they set them off, then the staff will unload them and the trucks will take them to the nearest dealerships. And this is right off Wagner Road. If you've been to the Petersburg area, you've probably been over it several hundred times. It's a really nice facility. I've been over it so many times. Before I talk about the Caboose, a common question is, have the railroads changed? Yes, they have, but they haven't changed that much. But one car you don't see anymore is a little Caboose. The Caboose was the last car of every freight train, and it served a vital purpose because you had the crew in the back, the engineer was up front, and their job was to inspect the train from the back to the front because the engineer cannot see what's going on behind. So in this little short clip, I will explain briefly on the importance of this Caboose.
All right, everyone, we are now inside this Norfolk and Western Caboose that's on display here at the Southern train station. And as you can see, this is where the crew used to be. Right here is where one of the men would actually do their paperwork. They used to be on this desk, and they put it right here in this drop box. And of course, we have a furnace to keep them warm in the wintertime. The head, of course, and a nice refrigerator. That's where they used to keep everything cold. Got a stove to cook the food, and of course a sink to wash their hands. This was like the home away from home, hotel on wheels. And as you can see, this is where they would sit, and the purpose of this window, I'm going to sit down here so you guys can take a look. This is a bay window Caboose, which means the window is on the side of the car. And from this angle, you can actually see the whole train from this side of the Caboose and inspecting that side for hot axles, which means a wheel that's not turning or of something else that may fall or may break. So this is the view that he got. And on the other side, it's the same thing. And of course, you had another man do the same thing. So this took the place of 2 or 3 jobs, and technology has taken over that. And that's why you don't see Cabooses on long distance freight trains anymore. But now for local freight trains, you still see a Caboose from time to time. Now if we come out here,
I want to show you a little clip of that. And this video explains that the Caboose was a vital part of railroad operations. You don't see these a lot anymore, but it's always neat to find one that's in operation. And one of the videos I have is one of our local freight trains that is still using a Caboose as a shoving platform. And I'll get to that here in a few minutes. As I mentioned in the video, that technology has replaced the Caboose operations. These new devices are called defect detectors. What is it? It is a device that is placed on the main line every few miles to inspect the train for defects. As I mentioned in the video, a hot axle means a wheel that's not turning, a wheel that is locked up, dragging equipment, something is dragging, it needs to be corrected immediately. So the railroads have used these devices since the 50s, but they did not start using these regularly until the 1980s. And to figure out the number of cars based on the axle count that it gives you, divide that axle number by 4 to get the number of cars on the train. And how's the information broadcasted? Well, a computer system installed on all of these, depending on the railroad, they broadcast the temperature sometimes, the axle count, the milepost number, where it is located, and of course the length of the train. As I mentioned, some Cabooses are still used today, but the chances of finding one on operation is very rare. Here in this next one, I've got 2 different samples of defect detectors. Both of them are broadcasting a little something different. We're going to start with the Delaware Hudson defect detector, which happens to be one of my favorites.
B&H detector, mileage 173.3, checking southward train, temperature 60 degrees, axle count 342, no defect
At Defect Detectors, you heard the milepost, you heard the direction of the train, and the axle count. The next one happens to be a local defect detector in Petersburg that a friend of mine actually recorded on his YouTube channel. This defect detector has long been replaced.
Equipment, defect, detector, milepost 17.4.
That bit of silence there, that means the train is entering the defect detector, and once the train gets off the defect detector, it will give the official report.
Equipment, defect, detector, milepost 17.4. No defects. Total axle 5.6. Temperature 3.8 degrees. End of transmit.
The next slide I'm going to show, I think this will put a smile on Yule's face. I think this will put a smile on your face, and I think you're going to laugh. Are trains more efficient than trucks? The answer is yes. Sorry, Yule. And that, in fact, is a Mack truck. That is a Mack truck. I put it in there for you. The answer is yes. Trains are more efficient than trucks. The reason is because the trains can go from point A to point B on a single gallon of fuel. What does this mean? It means less congestion on the highway, we burn and consume less fuel, and our highways are a little bit safer. Now, what railroads serve the United States? We talked railroads in general, but let's narrow it down to who serves in the U.S. Here we have 7 Class 1 railroads, which is defined as a large freight railroad that owns a majority of tracks in the North American continent. We have 7. Norfolk Southern, CSX, Amtrak, Union Pacific, Burlington Northern Santa Fe, Canadian Pacific, and Canadian National. Norfolk Southern, my favorite railroad. Norfolk Southern based right here in good old Norfolk, Virginia, and they serve 22 states as shown in the picture. Coal is the top commodity for the company, intermodal is the second, and the coal gets exported to foreign countries from Pier 6. Here I catch a coal train not from this area, but in North Carolina. I see a coal train in Salisbury, North Carolina coming out of Asheville, waiting to get a signal to go into Linwood Yard. As I mentioned a minute ago, containers are the second commodity for the company. Most of the containers that Norfolk gets, they're coming from Chicago, Illinois, Louisville, Kentucky, and Columbus, Ohio. Here I catch 2 trains. Below is NS ID 23G with the auto racks behind them bound for Petersburg. And then I catch another intermodal train in Suffolk, going east to Norfolk International Terminal. A little bit more on NS. Grain is the third commodity for the company, and this is grain season. It usually starts between early fall to midwinter. It's the peak of the grain season. And here I have a little information about this. According to John Pike, Operations Director of Goldsboro Milling Company in Wayne County, North Carolina, he produces 500 million pounds of pork every year. 40% of its grain comes locally from Carolina farmers. The other 60% is coming from the Midwest. And every week, 185 of these NS-covered hoppers, about 100 tons of grain, come onto his siding. Given the grain's bulk and distance traveled, rail is the cheapest method of transportation. First of all, this is efficient because the trains can carry more per load instead of 3 trucks carrying a lesser amount. This is why rail is very, very efficient to our economy. Norfolk Southern's competition, CSX. CSX is the second Class 1 freight railroad here in North America. They're headquartered in Jacksonville, Florida, and they serve the following states up here in the diagram. Containers are the top commodity for the company. Coal is the second. And containers that are inbound to Portsmouth come from Chicago, Illinois, and Columbus, Ohio. Here I catch 2 different trains. I catch an intermodal transfer job here on the left and a manifest train on the right. The intermodal job is actually coming from Suffolk going back to Portsmouth Terminal. As you see, the engine is running the other direction. Why is this? That is called long hood forward. It was a practice used from the 1950s to about the early 90s. This actually protected the crew from any head-on collision. The crew is facing toward the cars itself. The back acted as the front. If there was a head-on collision between two trains, it would damage the back of the engine, not the front of it. This practice was mostly used by the Norfolk and Western and the Southern Railway. It's not used much anymore, but I have a video that will show you that practice in action. And here I catch the manifest train here on the right at Collier Yard in Petersburg with the trash loads bound for Collier Yard as mentioned previously. Amtrak. Everybody knows what Amtrak is. Quick show of hands, how many of you have ridden Amtrak? All right, a good majority of you. I like that. Amtrak is America's passenger rail service. It was founded in 1971 by our U.S. government to relieve all railroads from passenger service. Back in the 1930s to about the 60s, all the Class I railroads had passenger service as well. Just a few examples: the Santa Fe Railway with the Super Chief, the Empire Builder, which was the Great Northern, the Pennsylvania Railroad was an example, and Union Pacific. They offer local passenger service here in the areas of Norfolk, which is about 10 minutes from this campus, Newport News, and Williamsburg on the peninsula, Richmond, Petersburg, and of course Ashland. In 2016, Amtrak served about 31 million passengers. It earned around $2.2 billion in revenue, and nearly 86,000 passengers ride Amtrak daily. Amtrak is vital to move our people locally, just from, let's say, Richmond to Ashland, for example, even long distances from Lorton, Virginia, all the way to Sanford, Florida. And here I do catch the Amtrak train going through Suffolk one night, bound for the Norfolk Amtrak station. Let's move on over to the Midwest. Union Pacific, based in Omaha, Nebraska, and it was founded by our 16th president, Abe Lincoln. They served the Midwest and western portions of our country, including California, Nebraska, Colorado, Oregon, Wyoming, Texas, and Illinois. About 21% or $4.5 billion of the revenue comes from shipping industrial products. 19% or $4 billion accounts for the intermodal traffic, and an additional 19% or $4 billion accounts for agricultural products. Here I catch a UP engine in Landis, North Carolina on NS Train 154 that was bound to Raleigh, North Carolina. Funny with this, a friend of mine that I met in my internship was a conductor for NS. He's now an electrician, but I was rail fanning that day and waved to me from the cab, and this was on his train. Union Pacific's competition, Burlington Northern Santa Fe, now owned by Mr. Warren Buffett. They are UP's competition, and they're headquartered in Fort Worth, Texas. And they serve the same territory as Union Pacific. In 2017, their revenue increased by 8%, bringing a total of $21.4 billion. A lot of money. And here I catch two NS trains with both having BNSF leaders. Thinking, what's a BNSF engine doing on NS tracks? Well, Norfolk Southern is leasing that locomotive. They have a certain amount of time they can use it, and once the lease is up, Norfolk Southern will pay a certain amount to use that locomotive. And right now, a lot of railroads are having to do this because business right now is very good. Let's move on over to Canada. Canadian National, based in Montreal. They're one of the two major Class I freight companies in Canada, and they serve the areas of Ontario, Montreal, and Quebec, and they also have some services here in North America, including Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Louisiana. CN is the largest railway in Canada in both terms of revenue and physical network, and they're the only transcontinental railway to span Canada from the East Coast to the West Coast. Here, one of my friends sends me a picture of a CN locomotive that led an NS train into Portlock. CN's competition, Canadian Pacific, based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada on the West Coast. They're the second Class I freight company. They serve from Montreal to Vancouver, and they have also some divisions in North America, including Minnesota, home of the Twin Cities, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Washington State. Here I catch another a CP engine leading a coal train into Pier 6. Now we've talked about our major railroads. Let's talk about some smaller railroads, known as a Shortline Railroad. They are an independent railroad that operates over a relatively short distance. And here we have a few examples. We have the Norfolk Portsmouth Beltline, or the NPBL, the Commonwealth Railway, or the CWRY, and the Buckingham Branch Railway, or BBR. Norfolk Portsmouth Beltline, based right over in South Norfolk, they interchange with both CSX and NS to distribute the mixed freight to local businesses. NPBL's only service is delivering grain to customers locally, and here are both the engines that they own. They only own 2 engines on their roster, but they use NS and CSX power on the line, and Norfolk Southern owns a majority of this company, and they provide all of their services. The Commonwealth Railway, owned by the Genesee and Wyoming Company, based in Darrington, Connecticut. They're a short line that serves Suffolk and Franklin, Virginia, and they partner with both CSX and NS in both divisions. The CWRY leases track to Norfolk Southern to make short runs to specific points, especially Portsmouth Terminal. In Suffolk, they bring the inbound containers to Portsmouth, and they serve the base of chemical plant about 15 minutes from my house. And in the Franklin division, which I'll show some pictures in a minute, they serve the International Paper Mill to move the cars in and out of the plant. And they prepare the empty cars for CSX to take south. Below are a couple of locomotives that they own in the Suffolk division. We have CWRY 517 and 2091. Both were built for the Santa Fe. And in fact, this locomotive here was originally built as a passenger engine. And in the 1970s, Santa Fe rebuilt it for freight service. Here are 3 engines that the Franklin division has. I went to see this operation over the summer. Here they have 3 engines. Rail Links 233, which used to be used at the Port of San Antonio. CWRY's 1551, which was built for the Harbor Railroad out in the Midwest. And Mid-Michigan number 24 was built for the Great Northern. They're old-time engines right here. The Buckingham Branch Railroad, based in Dillwyn, Virginia, just on the other side of Charlottesville. They mostly serve the central Virginia area, and they travel on 275 miles of track. The Buckingham Branch was founded in 1989, relatively new company, by CSX retiree Robert Bryant. The company began with the acquisition of a 16-mile long branch from CSX's James River subdivision near Bremo Bluff at the James River south of Dillwyn in Buckingham County. They provide some services. They transport coal and grain by interchanging with CSX in the northern part of the state, and on the former Bay Coast Railway, or former the Eastern Shore Railroad, they partner with NS to move some local freight. As I just mentioned a few minutes ago, the Bay Coast Railway was formerly the Eastern Shore Railroad. Sadly, they ended operations in May of this year, and Buckingham Branch has taken over part of the Bay Coast. And here is a small little diagram here on what they took over. Between milepost 6.7 at Diamond Springs, which is literally a couple minutes from the road. They took over that, and they're serving the local businesses there, so they're quickly getting the line back open. All right, as I mentioned earlier, containers are a big business right now. We have several ports. Norfolk International Terminal, we've got one in Portsmouth, the Virginia International Gateway, Port of Richmond, and the Virginia Inland Port. I did some research, and Port of Virginia ranks at number 7 in the top 10 of the U.S. This is excellent. Norfolk International Terminal, about 15 minutes from this campus. They have 648 acres of land, and here we see big cranes lifting the containers off the trailer chassis and also loading the outbound ships. The cranes that you see here are called MyJack cranes. They're specifically designed for container transport. They've been around since about the mid-'80s to early '90s. Excuse me. And they have been a very, very vital part in working around the terminals. The port has direct access for Norfolk Southern, and CSX has access by the Norfolk Portsmouth Belt Line, as mentioned ago. I'm proud to say I've been there through Dr. Pohl's supply chain management class. It was my favorite trip out of all of them. I almost told him I didn't want to leave because it was so unique how ships, trucks, and trains all work together in this spot. I could watch the show for the rest of the day. It was a really neat show.
I said I didn't want to leave.
Run across the Elizabeth River is Portsmouth Marine Terminal, located off of Interstate 664. They're the second largest of the four ports with 219 acres of land. Norfolk Southern has access to the terminal through the Commonwealth Railway, as I mentioned earlier, and CSX has direct access to Portsmouth Marine Terminal. Another part of PMT is the Virginia International Gateway. Here is just an overview shot of it. This is just another area where they load and unload trucks, trains, and ships. Port of Richmond. They're located in Richmond, right off of Interstate 95. They're the 26th largest port in the U.S. It's known as the gateway to Central Virginia. The 20-foot equivalent capacity is between 50,000 and 60,000 20-foot equivalents. It is served by NS and CSX daily. CSX has direct access, and NS has some access to perform local switching. The Virginia Inland Port, located in Front Royal, Virginia, and as you notice, there's no water on this port. That's why it is called the Inland Port. This terminal is mostly trucks and trains specifically. As you can see here, this diagram does a pretty good job of explaining that Norfolk Southern has 5-day-a-week service. They service it all the weekdays, and they handle about 60,000 20-foot equivalents in 2008. This diagram explains that the intermodal business right now is extraordinary. More trucks are coming off the highway, and our ports are getting busier. And if my understanding is correct, that Norfolk and Portsmouth terminals are getting ready to expand, and it's supposed to be a really good project. I know they just expanded the lease on it about a couple of years ago. So it's going to be a really good investment for the Port of Virginia. Now, as everybody knows, I watch trains. I have my own YouTube channel. It's Engineer Pat 5290, and I mostly watch a lot of trains. This one here was the transfer job on CSX, like I had mentioned a few minutes ago. We're going to see a little sneak bit, and this is actually going along with 4, so you're going to see this practice in. I actually saw this on my way to homecoming. I was really surprised to see this too.
Hello everyone. On October 6th of 2018, I was on my way to my college campus for homecoming events. I ran into an unexpected surprise that I thought I would never see again, but that all changed. Here I catch CSX F76706 transfer with CSX ES44AC-H number 3144 running long hood forward today. This unit was built in 2000.